At my mom's birthday celebration, everything appeared completely normal. Then, my 10-year-old daughter called me on the phone. "Get out now," she said. "What happened?" I asked, my voice catching. Her voice trembled as she spoke. "Get out of the house. Right now." I obeyed without question. It turned out to be the last time I ever stepped foot inside my parents' home. 3 months later, they were desperately begging me to forgive them, to understand, to come back. It was just a birthday party, a regular, middle-of-the-road celebration with pastel decorations and paper napkins. The kind of gathering you've attended 100 times before. My mom had prepared that fruit tart she always makes when she wants to appear low effort, but still somehow superior to everyone else in the room. My dad was recounting one of his go-to stories about how much harder life used to be back in his day, the same tale we'd all heard dozens of times. My sister Bianca had brought colorful balloons and was acting as if she hadn't spent the entire morning yelling at her children in the car on the way over. In other words, everything felt utterly normal. The kind of normal that becomes invisible when you're living inside it, breathing it in day after day. The same familiar smells wafting through the air, the same voices bouncing off the walls, the same rhythms and patterns repeating themselves. There were a few scattered laughs here and there, some minor complaints about traffic or the weather. My daughter Freya had wandered off somewhere to play or read, as she often did at these family gatherings. There were cupcakes arranged on a platter, cheap wine being poured into mismatched glasses, background music playing softly from someone's phone speaker. No drama unfolding. No shouting matches, no tension that I could detect hanging in the air like a storm cloud. I wasn't even actively thinking about anything in particular. I was just existing in the moment, floating through it all in that detached way you do at family events, keeping my head down and my mouth shut like I'd carefully trained myself to do over the years. Keep things light and pleasant. Don't bring up any of the hard stuff or uncomfortable topics. Smile even when you're exhausted and don't feel like smiling. Play along with everyone's pretenses and unspoken rules. Looking back now, with the clarity that only hindsight can provide, I want to reach back through time and shake myself awake. How did I not feel something was wrong? How did I not notice that anything was off? That something dark was brewing beneath the surface? But I genuinely didn't sense anything amiss. If anything, I actually thought that maybe things were finally starting to improve, that perhaps we'd all somehow settled into some kind of fragile peace after years of underlying friction. I even caught myself genuinely smiling once or twice during the afternoon, thinking that maybe, just maybe, we'd turn a corner as a family. And then my phone rang, shattering that illusion completely. I pulled it out of my pocket and blinked down at the screen, confused by what I saw. My daughter was calling me. That struck me as strange, unusual even. She normally just came and found me directly if she needed something or wanted to tell me something. I glanced around the room, scanning the faces and corners, but I didn't see her anywhere. Maybe she was upstairs exploring the bedrooms, or perhaps she'd gone outside to the backyard to get some fresh air. I swiped to answer, bringing the phone to my ear. "Hey, what's up?" I said casually, expecting her to ask for a snack or tell me she was bored. Her voice hit me like a physical punch to the gut. "Get out now," she said urgently. I stopped moving entirely. The room around me didn't stop. People kept talking, laughing, moving, but I did. It was like the air itself had fundamentally shifted, like reality had cracked open just slightly. "What happened?" I asked, my voice suddenly tight with concern. "Just get out of the house, please, right now," she urged. Her voice was shaking noticeably. She was whispering, speaking so quietly I had to strain to hear her over the ambient noise of the party. She sounded genuinely scared, terrified even, in a way I'd never heard from her before. I stood up slowly, trying not to draw attention to myself. My mind went completely blank for a moment, then suddenly became overwhelmingly loud with racing thoughts. What's going on? Did someone hurt her? Did she fall and injure herself? Was there someone dangerous in the house? Was she in immediate danger? The questions cascaded through my consciousness, each one more frightening than the last. I didn't ask anything else aloud. I simply started walking toward the front door. Not a single word to anyone in the room. Not a glance back at the snack table laden with treats or at my mom's bright, cheerful smile as she chatted with guests. Not even a pause to check if I was wearing my shoes or had my keys. I just moved forward like my body had completely taken over from my mind, like I was floating outside of myself, watching some other version of me walk through the motions with mechanical precision. When I stepped outside into the late afternoon air, everything felt surreal. The air was still pleasantly warm against my skin. The garden surrounding my parents' house smelled like freshly cut grass, mixed with someone's cheap perfume lingering from when they'd walked past earlier. And there she was, standing motionless by the driveway, her backpack slung over one small shoulder, her eyes locked intensely on mine with an expression I couldn't quite read. She wasn't crying or making any sound. She wasn't moving either, just standing there like a statue. For a second that felt like an eternity, my heart actually stopped beating. Actually, genuinely stopped. Then everything caught up all at once, my breathing, my heartbeat, my ability to process what I was seeing. I rushed over to her quickly, my feet moving faster than my thoughts. "What's going on? What happened?" I asked breathlessly. "Can we go?" She responded simply, her voice still flat and quiet. "I don't want to talk here," she said firmly. "Just get in the car. Please." I looked at her carefully, studying her hands, her face, the way she was clutching the straps of her bag like they were the only thing keeping her grounded. She wasn't physically injured as far as I could tell, but she looked absolutely hollow, emptied out somehow. "Did someone yell at you?" I asked gently. "Did someone say something cruel or inappropriate to you?" "No," she said after a pause. "Not exactly like that. Just please, let's go. I need to leave." I nodded, unable to form words. My voice didn't seem to work properly anymore. I just turned around mechanically, unlocked the car with trembling hands, and climbed into the driver's seat while she got in beside me. We drove away in complete silence. Not fast or dramatic like in a movie, just gone. Disappeared from the scene as if we'd never been there at all. No one saw us leave, or if they did notice, no one stopped us or came running after the car. She stared fixedly out the passenger window at the passing houses and trees. I kept my hands gripped tight on the steering wheel, knuckles white with tension. My brain was desperately trying to fill in blanks that I didn't have any information for, trying to solve a puzzle without being able to see the pieces. Did she overhear something terrible? Did someone actually hurt her in some way? Did someone threaten her or make her feel unsafe? Was it one of the other children at the party? Was it my mom who said something cutting? My dad with one of his inappropriate jokes? Everything suddenly seemed possible. Every scenario my imagination conjured up was somehow worse than the one that had come before it. I wanted desperately to ask more questions, to understand what had happened. I didn't dare. Something about her posture, her silence, told me she needed space and time. We pulled into a parking lot beside an old garden center a few blocks away from my parents' house. It was closed for the day, the lot empty and quiet. I turned off the engine and just sat there in the sudden silence, listening to the ticking of the cooling engine. "Okay," I said finally, as gently as I could manage. "We're alone now. You can tell me what happened." She didn't answer immediately. I turned my head to look at her fully. Her hands were folded in her lap, fingers intertwined. She was still staring straight ahead through the windshield at nothing in particular. After what felt like an eternity, she finally spoke. "I don't want to go back," she said quietly but firmly. "Not to Grandma's house. Not to Grandpa. Not to that house. Not ever again. Not for anything." I felt like all the breath had been knocked out of my lungs by an invisible force. Her voice wasn't angry or dramatic or exaggerated. It was flat, honest, matter of fact. The way you say something when you've already made the decision and lived with it in your head for hours, or maybe even days before finally saying it out loud to another person. "I don't understand," I said softly, trying to keep my voice calm and reassuring. "I thought everything was fine today. What happened in there?" She just shook her head, slowly from side to side. "Please don't make me go back," she repeated, her voice breaking slightly. "Promise me." I sat there staring at the steering wheel, trying desperately to make my brain catch up with reality, trying to connect dots when I hadn't even been able to see the board we were playing on. "I won't," I said finally, meaning it with every fiber of my being. "I won't take you back there. I promise." And that was it. She didn't explain further. I didn't push her for details. We just sat there together in silence, me wondering how I'd completely missed whatever she had seen or experienced. Her quietly trying to hold herself together emotionally in the passenger seat beside me. I kept trying to replay the entire day back in my head like a film I could pause and examine, replaying every look exchanged, every comment made, every moment I might have missed or dismissed. And I had nothing, absolutely nothing that explained this reaction. That's what scared me the most, deep down in my bones. I didn't see whatever it was coming. I had lived in that house throughout my entire childhood. I knew these people intimately, or at least I thought I knew them. And yet my daughter had witnessed or experienced something that made her want to run, something that triggered such a strong protective instinct that she risked calling me in the middle of a family gathering to demand we leave immediately. And I would never, ever forget the way she sounded on that phone call. Like her life genuinely depended on getting out of that house, like mine did too, though I didn't understand why yet. Before any of that, though, before this moment that would change everything, there was a whole life that led us to this point. I was the oldest of 2 girls in my family. You'd think that being the firstborn came with some kind of authority, with natural leadership qualities, maybe even with a little bit of favoritism from parents who were excited about their first child. Not in my family. Not even close. In my family, being the eldest daughter meant you were the guinea pig, the experimental child. The let's see what happens if we do this test case for parenting strategies that would later be refined or completely abandoned. When I turned 15 and managed to get a job at the local bakery down the street, my parents clapped and cheered like I'd just been knighted by royalty or received some prestigious award. Not because they were genuinely proud of my initiative or work ethic, mind you, but because now I could actively help with paying the bills. "We all contribute in this house," my mom said firmly, waving off my protests dismissively when I wanted to use my own earnings to buy myself a simple pair of jeans that I desperately needed. By the time I turned 16, I was routinely handing over half of my entire paycheck to my parents and picking up weekend shifts that no one had asked me to take, working myself to exhaustion. I told myself repeatedly that it was noble, that it was family-oriented, that it was mature and responsible behavior. I convinced myself that this was what good daughters did. Then my sister hit the same age a few years later. No job requirements, no pressure whatsoever, no mention of contributing financially to the household expenses. She got to sleep in peacefully on weekend mornings and go to the mall with her friends while I was elbow deep in dish soap and working overtime hours at the bakery. I asked my mom once, very gently and carefully, why there was such a difference in our treatment. "She's just not built the same way as you," she said casually, as if I was a factory model designed for labor and my sister was a delicate porcelain doll that needed to be protected and preserved. So I swallowed my frustration and resentment. I didn't want to be petty or jealous. I didn't want to make trouble or create family conflict. Besides, I tried to convince myself I was doing okay overall. I had plans for my future. I had dreams and ambitions, or so I thought at the time. I married young, probably too young in retrospect. But at the time, I genuinely thought I was happy that I'd found the right person. My husband Vincent was charming in that low-energy, passive sort of way that initially makes you think he's easygoing and relaxed. He wasn't easygoing at all. I worked constantly putting in long hours. I had a good job, better than good actually. Long hours certainly, but with a good salary and a solid professional reputation that I'd worked hard to build. Vincent worked part-time at best. He said he wanted to spend more quality time with our daughter Freya, He said I was naturally better at the career stuff anyway, that I was more suited for the corporate world. And at the time, that arrangement actually worked for me. I didn't question it seriously. I didn't realize how quickly and subtly imbalance can start to feel like normal, like that's just the way things are supposed to be. Then things shifted, gradually at first, almost imperceptibly. He got increasingly short-tempered, more withdrawn from family life, snapped more often at both of us over minor things. His presence in the house started to feel like walking carefully on cracked glass. Nothing was openly broken yet, but you could feel the danger in every step you took. And it bled over into everything, not just affecting our marriage, but impacting our daughter too. Not hitting, not leaving visible bruises, but there was constant shouting that echoed through the house. Doors slamming violently, long uncomfortable silences that stretched for days, threats muttered just low enough that he could later deny having said them. The final straw that broke everything was the bottle. He threw it violently across the room during an argument. It didn't hit anyone directly. He didn't mean to hurt anyone, he insisted afterward. But our daughter was standing in the hallway when it shattered explosively against the wall. She flinched so hard and so instinctively that she dropped the ceramic mug she'd been holding in her hands, and something deep inside me cracked irreparably in that moment. I didn't wait around to see what would come next, what the next escalation might be. I packed a bag as quickly as I could, took my daughter by the hand, and walked out of that house without looking back. I went back to the one place I never thought I'd need to return to again. Home. My parents' home. Except it wasn't really home anymore, not in any meaningful sense. My parents took us in, technically speaking. They opened their door and let us move into one of the spare rooms. But it was clear from the very beginning that this generosity came at a cost, that there were strings attached to their assistance. By moving back into my childhood home, I had to give up my job, my career that I'd worked so hard to build. There was absolutely no way I could keep up that demanding schedule as a newly single mother. Not with court hearings to attend, trauma therapy sessions for my daughter, school pickups, and a kid who had started flinching noticeably at sudden noises or raised voices. And in my particular line of work, part-time options are like mythical unicorns. Everyone talks about them, but nobody has actually seen one. I settled for something flexible and humiliatingly underpaid, a job that was far beneath my qualifications. It was enough to barely survive, not enough to actually live comfortably, and definitely not enough to support anyone else financially, which turned out to be a significant problem. You see, for years before this, I'd been the golden goose of the family, the reliable source of extra income. When I was still earning my good salary, I'd send my parents money every single month without fail, covered their big bills when they came due, took care of smaller expenses without them even having to ask. I even paid completely for their all-inclusive vacation to Portugal 2 summers ago, a trip they still talk about nostalgically like it was the absolute highlight of their entire lives. So when the monthly checks suddenly stopped arriving, when the financial support I'd been providing for years abruptly ended, their comfortable lifestyle took a hit. It was quiet, but definitely noticeable to anyone paying attention. They weren't openly unhappy about it. They didn't complain directly, but you could see it in the little things, the small behavioral changes. The way my mom sighed heavily when she looked at the grocery bill at the checkout. The way my dad brought up the water bill twice a week, making pointed comments. The way they suddenly, conveniently forgot to add me to the family group chat where they shared news and made plans. And the house itself was already packed full of people. My sister Bianca and her husband lived there too, along with their 2 toddlers who had the chaotic energy of caffeinated raccoons and absolutely zero volume control whatsoever. They essentially lived there rent-free, contributing nothing financially. My parents doted on those children constantly, watched them, babysat them eagerly, bragged about them to neighbors and friends. So I thought to myself, if she can stay here with her entire circus of a family, surely I can stay too with just one quiet child, right? That seemed reasonable, but it didn't feel right from the start. From day one of moving back, I noticed a shift in how we were treated compared to my sister's family. My daughter's colorful drawings didn't stay proudly displayed on the refrigerator for more than a day before being taken down. Her plate at dinner was cleared away before she'd even finished eating. Once she got scolded harshly for talking too much when all she'd actually done was laugh innocently at a cartoon on television. There were stares, looks exchanged between family members. Not from everyone necessarily, but from enough people that it created an uncomfortable atmosphere. She noticed it too, of course she did. Children are far more perceptive than adults give them credit for. She stopped spending time downstairs with the family. She clung to me more physically and emotionally. She asked repeatedly if we could have our own place soon, if this situation was really temporary. And I told her we would get our own place, that this living arrangement was just temporary. That family was supposed to help each other in difficult times. I really, genuinely believed that comforting lie I was telling her, right up until the day she called me at my mother's birthday party and urgently told me to get out of the house immediately. We sat together in the car, parked under a sad little tree in a quiet parking lot. My hands were resting on the steering wheel, but I wasn't driving anywhere. I wasn't ready to move yet. I finally spoke, breaking the heavy silence. "Can you tell me what happened in there?" I asked as gently as I could manage. She didn't hesitate this time, not like before when she'd been reluctant to speak. "Grandma and Grandpa and Aunt Bianca, they don't want me there," she said simply, her voice flat and emotionless. "They were talking. I was in the bathroom. They didn't know I could hear them through the door." I stared straight ahead through the windshield, forcing myself to stay calm and composed and let her talk without interruption. "They said they're going to send me back to Daddy," she continued, her voice steady but quiet. "That I'd be better off with him, that they're actively planning something to make it happen." She said it like it was just factual information, like reporting the weather forecast, nothing personal or emotional attached to it at all. "I don't want to go," she added quietly, still looking straight out the passenger window at nothing in particular. "I don't want to be anywhere near him ever again." I didn't say anything in response. I couldn't find words. My daughter had overheard a detailed plan to hand her back to the very man I'd risked everything to take her away from, the man whose violence had shattered our sense of safety, and I hadn't seen a single thing coming. I'd been completely blind to it all. When I was a kid growing up, I thought betrayal would be louder, more dramatic and obvious, like someone jumping out and yelling surprise with a knife clutched in their hand, something you couldn't possibly miss. Turns out it was much quieter than that. Sometimes betrayal hid itself in bathroom tiles and murmured softly through thin walls. Sometimes it was whispered casually by the very people who raised you, who were supposed to protect you unconditionally. I looked directly at her, studying her profile. They said, "What exactly?" I asked, needing to hear the specifics, needing to understand the full scope of what had been discussed. She didn't blink or look away from the window. "They're planning to make you lose me," she said simply. "They were talking in the kitchen while I was in the bathroom. They didn't know I could hear them through the door." I waited, braced for what was coming next, my hands gripping the steering wheel tighter. "They said you'd lose custody anyway eventually, that they could help make it happen faster, that Daddy would take better care of me than you can." She paused, swallowing hard. "And if I went back to him, then you'd be forced to go back to your old job, the one that paid well. You'd start helping them financially again like before." I opened my mouth to respond, but absolutely nothing came out. My voice had disappeared completely. "They said you'd be better off too," she continued, her voice getting smaller. She paused again, gathering courage. "They said they could plant something in your stuff. Drugs, maybe, to make it look bad. Make you look like an unfit mother. And then they'd call child services and report you." Silence filled the car like a heavy fog. Complete, suffocating silence. "They want to frame me," I finally managed to whisper. She just nodded slowly, confirmation of the unthinkable. Her lips were pressed so tightly together that they'd gone completely white from the pressure, And you're absolutely sure about what you heard? I asked, still hoping desperately that there'd been some terrible misunderstanding. They said it, Mom. They said all of it clearly, she replied with certainty. That I'm too much to handle. That I never stop talking and asking questions. That the house is too full now, and it used to be so nice and quiet before we moved in. They said you're not useful to them anymore financially. She took a shaky breath. And that he was always the better parent anyway. That you're too emotional and unstable. I felt something fundamental shift deep inside me. Not snap violently, not shatter into pieces. Just shift into a new configuration. A new reality I had to accept. So I packed what I could fit in my backpack, she said quietly. Then I left the party and went outside. I called you. I looked down at her small backpack, sitting in the footwell of the car. She'd even remembered to grab my phone charger in her rush to pack. I nearly lost all composure right there in that moment. Instead, I took a deep breath, turned the key in the ignition, and drove. I didn't go back to my parents' house. Not for our clothes, not for answers or confrontation, not even for something as basic as my toothbrush. I drove straight to Chris's house without hesitation. Chris and I have been close friends since we were both 10 years old. We never dated, never even tried, never had that awkward moment of romantic tension. He's just one of those rare human unicorns, a platonic male best friend who shows up when you need him, keeps quiet when you need silence, and always has extra toothpaste in his bathroom cabinet. He opened the door with a steaming coffee mug in one hand and only one sock on his foot, clearly having just woken up. I need to crash here for a while, I said without preamble. He looked at me carefully, then at my daughter standing beside me with her small backpack, and he stepped aside without asking a single question. That's exactly why he's still in my life after all these years. That night, we slept on his comfortable couch. Freya curled up beside me, too quiet and still for a kid her age, unnaturally subdued. I stared up at the ceiling for hours, counting the ceiling fan rotations and trying desperately not to scream out loud. My phone buzzed repeatedly, 17 times throughout the night. I didn't check it even once. I couldn't bear to see what they were saying. The next morning, I tried my best to be normal, to create some sense of routine and stability. I brushed my hair until it looked presentable, found socks that almost matched, packed my daughter's lunch carefully, and added a napkin with a deliberately bad doodle of a cat that I hoped would make her smile. I kissed her cheek gently and said, "You're so brave, you know that?" She nodded solemnly in response. No smile appeared on her face, just that solid, heartbreaking bravery that no child should have to possess. We walked together to her school, and they were already there waiting. Of course they were. My parents were standing by the school gate like some kind of mafia delegation, except with tote bags and that fake polite tension people wear on their faces when they're about to say something truly awful. My daughter froze completely when she saw them, her body going rigid. "It's okay," I said reassuringly, putting my hand on her shoulder. "Go inside to your classroom. I've got this handled." She ran off quickly, glancing back once before disappearing through the school doors. I turned to face the enemy, squaring my shoulders. "Where have you been?" my mom snapped immediately. "No, good morning." No hug, no apology for what I'd overheard they'd been planning. Just accusation. "I think you already know exactly where I've been," I said calmly. "We've been calling you all night long," my dad added, his voice tight with irritation. "You disappeared with her without telling anyone. We were worried sick." "I didn't disappear," I said evenly. "I removed my daughter from a place where people were actively plotting to destroy my life and take away my child." My mom blinked rapidly, caught off guard. "Excuse me? What are you talking about?" I didn't flinch or back down. "She heard you in the kitchen while you were laying out your little custody sabotage plan in detail," I said clearly. "That's absolutely ridiculous," she said quickly, too quickly. "She must have misunderstood what we were discussing. She's just a child." Did she misunderstand the specific part where you were planning to plant drugs on me to make me look like an unfit mother? I asked pointedly. Her mouth opened, then closed without sound. A deep flush crept up her neck and colored her cheeks. We were just talking about hypotheticals, she mumbled weakly. You've been so stressed lately. You quit your good job. The custody fight with Vincent isn't going anywhere. You've been struggling so much, and we were just trying to. I cut her off sharply. I've been trying to survive and protect my daughter while you've been busy plotting my complete collapse because your spa weekends and vacation funds dried up when I stopped sending you money. That's not fair at all, my dad protested. We've helped you tremendously. We took you in when you had nowhere else to go. I actually laughed out loud at that. Actually laughed. You housed me temporarily after I paid your bills faithfully for years, I said. After I booked you to a full week in Portugal and bought your expensive espresso machine and covered your water bills and your grocery bills. My mom's eyes narrowed dangerously. So this is about money now? That's what this comes down to. This is about loyalty, I said firmly, which you sold cheaply for a better chance at comfortable holidays and not having to budget carefully. We just wanted what's best for her, my dad said, trying a different approach. You're fighting with Vincent all the time. He was always so good with her when you were married. He was patient and... He threw a glass bottle at the wall while she was standing in the room. I snapped, my voice rising. He wasn't a father to her. He was a threat, an active danger, and you knew that. You knew exactly why I left him. My mom folded her arms defensively across her chest. You're being overly emotional right now. You're blowing this completely out of. I'm done, I said, cutting her off. I'm completely done letting you twist this situation. You deliberately tried to wreck my custody case. You tried to erase me as a mother so you could go back to being financially comfortable. That's the truth. There was heavy silence between us. I looked back and forth between them, seeing them clearly for the first time. You want comfort? You'll have it, I said quietly but firmly. Starting right now. You'll never hear from me again. Not a cent of financial support, not a visit, not another ounce of my time or energy or love. Don't be so dramatic about this, my dad said dismissively. You're overreacting. I turned away from them. You haven't seen dramatic yet, I said over my shoulder. But you will if you try to contact me or my daughter ever again. And I walked away without looking back. That night, Chris found me sitting alone in his kitchen, my arms wrapped tightly around a mug of tea that I hadn't actually touched or drunk from. You okay? He asked gently, sitting down across from me. No, I said honestly, but at least I know exactly where I stand now. At least I know the truth. My daughter came out from the guest room in her pajamas, holding the bad cat doodle napkin carefully in her small hand. She didn't say anything at all, just sat down next to me at the table and leaned her head against my arm. I didn't cry, not because I wasn't absolutely devastated, but because I was too exhausted emotionally to produce tears. I'd lost my parents, or rather, I'd finally seen who they really were, and walked away from people who'd never truly been parents at all. Or maybe I just finally admitted to myself that they were never really mine to lose in the first place. They'd never been the parents I needed or deserved. What I hadn't lost was sitting right next to me at that kitchen table, and I would burn the whole damn world down to ashes before I let anyone take her away from me again. You'd think after everything that had already happened, after all the betrayals and revelations, I would have learned to relax and breathe easier when things got quiet. But I didn't. I couldn't. Silence, I had discovered, is just betrayal taking a breath, gathering strength before the next attack. It had been several weeks since we'd heard anything at all from my parents. No text messages, no phone calls, no threats, no weird distant cousin reaching out to check on us or probe for information. Just stillness and silence. Chris called it peace, a welcome respite. I called it deeply suspicious. Freya was doing better, though, slowly but noticeably. She was sleeping through the night again, eating regular meals again without me having to coax her. She'd started drawing these odd little comic strips featuring wolves fighting against snakes. And I didn't ask too many questions about the symbolism because they all ended the same way, with the wolf winning decisively and curling up safely in a den with her cub. That was good enough for me to feel hopeful. I was still staying at Chris's place. I say still, like I had some apartment lease lined up somewhere and just hadn't gotten around to signing it yet. I didn't. I had absolutely nothing lined up, no plans, no security deposit saved. And Chris, bless his generous heart, hadn't once hinted that we were overstaying our welcome or wearing out our invitation. He made Freya pancakes in the morning and made me coffee and said things like, "You can stay here as long as you need to," and I was starting to genuinely believe that he meant it. Then came the job offer that changed everything. It was flexible with remote work options. It paid well, genuinely well, and I wouldn't have to sell my soul or give up seeing my kid just to afford basic groceries like cheese again. I didn't cry when I got the official offer email, but I did lock myself in the bathroom for 10 minutes and laugh until I coughed and couldn't breathe properly. That job was my first piece of the old life. The good part, the part I'd worked so hard to build, clawing its way back into existence. So, of course, because the universe has a sixth sense of timing, that's exactly when I saw the photos that shattered my brief moment of hope. I wasn't even snooping or looking for trouble. I had simply opened Instagram to check if Freya's school had posted any updates about the upcoming art show she was participating in. And there they were, displayed prominently on my feed. My parents, lounging on a beautiful beach somewhere, tropical with Vincent. Vincent, sunburned and grinning like someone who knew the judge personally, like someone who had insider information. Bianca was there too in the photos, looking as smug as a wet cat holding a coconut drink with a little umbrella in it, like it was court-admissible evidence of their righteousness. The caption said simply, "Family first." Then below that, "So proud of the kind of dad he is to our beautiful granddaughter." I didn't drop the phone in shock. I just stared at the screen, my brain processing what I was seeing. Then calmly turned the screen to show Chris and said flatly, "Well, that explains exactly why they've been so quiet lately. They're tanning their betrayal on a beach somewhere." He didn't say anything for a long while, just looked at the photos carefully. Then he reached over and handed me a cookie from the jar on the counter. That's precisely why I love him. 2 days later, Child Protection Services showed up at Chris's door unannounced. They knocked loudly at 9 a.m. on a Thursday morning. I opened the door, still half-dressed in pajamas and a mismatched cardigan. Freya was in the bathroom brushing her teeth, and Chris was somewhere in the back of the house trying to fix the perpetually leaky kitchen faucet with the world's smallest wrench and growing frustration. "We received a report," the woman said professionally, clipboard held firmly in hand. Her colleague was standing slightly behind her, scanning the hallway and entryway like we might be hiding methamphetamine in a potted plant or something equally absurd. I didn't have to ask who had reported me, but I asked anyway, needing to hear it confirmed. "It was your parents who filed the report," she said matter-of-factly. "Of course it was," I said, unsurprised. "They said I'd run off irresponsibly with Freya, that I was emotionally unstable and unpredictable, that I didn't have a permanent home or stable living situation, that I was involving strange men inappropriately in my daughter's care." That last bit, I guess, was referring to Chris, who was currently in the kitchen pouring orange juice into a plastic cup shaped like a unicorn horn for my daughter's breakfast. They checked all the bedrooms thoroughly, asked Freya a few standard questions in private, inspected the contents of the fridge and pantry, looked around carefully. They found absolutely nothing concerning. They said we'd only hear back from them if further action was needed, which was their polite way of saying the complaint was baseless. I thanked them with all the emotional warmth of a plastic sandwich bag, then closed the door. Then I went directly into the bathroom and vomited. The next day, I sat across from my lawyer in his small office while he poked unenthusiastically at a wilted salad and said things like, "This is serious, Vanessa. This is a serious development." "No kidding," I muttered sarcastically. He explained carefully that if my parents testified on behalf of Vincent in the custody case, which was now only days away, it would hurt my case significantly. "They're close family members," he said, setting down his fork. "They've known you your entire life. If they paint a convincing picture of instability and poor judgment, it'll hold considerable weight with the judge." I looked at my lawyer, who had once worn a tie with bright pink flamingos on it to a mediation session, and asked directly, "Do you honestly think I'm going to lose her?" He sighed heavily, removing his glasses to rub his eyes. "Not if she speaks up for herself. Not if she tells the judge what she wants." That night, Freya asked me quietly if she would have to talk in court, if she'd have to speak in front of everyone. I said yes, if she wanted to stay with me permanently, she'd likely need to. I wouldn't force her, but it would help immensely. She didn't even blink or hesitate. She just said good firmly and went back to sketching her ongoing wolf comic. This particular installment had snakes wearing what looked unmistakably like grandma wigs. I almost laughed despite everything. The courtroom smelled distinctly like cheap air freshener attempting to mask something unpleasant and lies. So many lies hanging in the air. Vincent showed up wearing a suit so stiff and knew it looked like it was wearing him instead of the other way around. My parents came in shortly after him, walking in together and sitting directly behind his chair like they belonged to him now, like they were his parents instead of mine. Bianca didn't even glance my way when she entered. Not once. Freya sat beside me at our table, swinging her legs nervously under the chair, her feet not quite reaching the floor. Chris gave me a half-smile of encouragement from where he sat in the back row, a steady shadow of support. The first day of testimony was absolutely brutal. My parents took the stand one after another and said I was moody and not emotionally stable enough to be a primary parent. My mother said, as if it were established fact, that I'd always been too sensitive about everything, too emotional, too reactive. My father nodded along like he was being interviewed for a documentary called How to Destroy Your Daughter in Court. Bianca echoed everything they said when it was her turn. Vincent was a wonderful father, she testified. She said he stayed home with Freya. He cared for her tenderly. He was always patient and kind, never raised his voice. I wanted desperately to stand up and scream at all of them. Then why the hell did I leave him? Why did I risk everything to get away? But I didn't. I forced myself to sit there perfectly still, my nails digging painfully into my palm while they systematically described a version of me I didn't recognize, a fictional character they'd created to serve their purposes. And then finally, mercifully, it was Freya's turn to testify. She walked up and took the stand like it was a school presentation she'd prepared for, with quiet confidence. She looked directly at the judge, not at her father sitting across the room. "I want to live with my mom," she said clearly. "She listens to me. She makes me feel safe. She's never yelled at me or made me feel scared." They asked her questions about Vincent, about her memories of living with him. She hesitated, gathering her thoughts. Then she took a deep breath and said clearly, "He gets angry, really angry. He throws things when he's upset. He threw a bottle once across the room. It shattered against the wall. It scared me so much." The courtroom fell into complete silence. You could have heard a pin drop. And then she added, her voice unwavering, "I don't want to live with him. I don't feel safe when I'm around him." The lawyer asked her gently if anyone else had ever made her feel uncomfortable or unsafe. She nodded slowly. "My grandma and aunt said they wanted me to go live with him," she testified, "that they were going to make Mommy lose me. They said they'd put stuff in her bag to get her in trouble with the police or social services. They talked about planting drugs." Dead silence filled the entire courtroom. Not a single person moved or made a sound. I wasn't crying. I physically couldn't cry. I felt like I'd been dropped into a complete vacuum where nothing existed except her voice telling our truth. And that testimony should have been enough to end everything right there. But the universe wasn't done with its revelations yet. During the court break, when everyone filed out into the hallway, Vincent approached my mother. They were arguing about something, their voices raised. I couldn't hear the specific words being exchanged, but I saw the motion clearly. His hand shot out and grabbed her wrist hard, sharply, aggressively. She yanked it back violently, her face shocked. My father immediately stepped in between them, protectively. Vincent stormed off down the hallway, and that was the last time my parents ever stood near him again, the last time they defended him. They didn't come back to court after that break. They simply left the building and didn't return. My lawyer told me later, after everything was finished, that they'd officially withdrawn their testimony and that we had more than enough evidence without them anyway. We returned to court for the final session. My lawyer brought absolute fire to his closing arguments. He methodically laid out the entire money trail for the judge to examine. The car Vincent had bought for my parents, the expensive vacation to Portugal, the hidden assets Vincent hadn't properly disclosed during our divorce proceedings. It was all documented there in black and white, receipts, bank transactions, transfer records. He'd systematically bought their loyalty with money and gifts, and then when the money for me stopped flowing, when I could no longer afford to support them, so did their support for me. They'd turned on me for financial reasons. The judge ruled decisively in my favor. I got full legal custody of Freya, with no visitation rights for Vincent, no contact permitted whatsoever. It was the best possible outcome. Vincent left the courtroom with his face red and sweating profusely, looking like he'd been physically struck. My parents didn't show up at all for the final ruling. The week after the ruling was officially filed, all of their vacation photos mysteriously vanished from social media. Every single one. The expensive car was gone from their driveway, presumably repossessed or sold. The financial glow that Vincent had provided them dried up completely and instantly. Chris showed me a screenshot he'd managed to capture of one of my mom's Facebook posts before it was hastily deleted. It said simply, "Sometimes family is the hardest lesson." I laughed when I read it, actually laughed out loud at the irony. She still didn't get it. She still thought she was the victim somehow. Fast forward a full year from that day. I still wake up sometimes in the middle of the night, half expecting a war to be raging, expecting conflict and danger. But then I look over to one side and see Chris snoring peacefully into his pillow, and I look to the other side and see Freya curled up safely on the other side of the bed with her stuffed wolf plushie clutched in her arms. And I remember with relief that we're okay now. We're actually okay. We're safe. Chris and I ended up together romantically, which still surprises me when I think about it. For the longest time, I genuinely didn't see him that way at all. I'd known him since we were both kids, way back when he used to eat crayons and swear seriously that he'd be a firefighter pre-scientist when he grew up. I think I'd mentally filed him under permanent friend material and just left him categorized there without reconsidering. Turns out he'd liked me romantically for years, harboring feelings he never expressed. He told me one night over burnt toast and cheap dishwater wine that he never said anything because he didn't want to ruin what we had, didn't want to lose the friendship that meant so much to him. But then something fundamental shifted between us. Maybe it was the way he gently held Freya's hand during the court proceedings, or the fact that he never once tried to fix me or tell me what to do. He just stood beside me steadily while I completely unraveled and slowly reassembled myself into a stronger version. Maybe it was just timing, the right moment finally arriving. Maybe it was everything combined. All I know for certain is that one night he kissed me hesitantly, and I kissed him back without hesitation, and suddenly the whole world made a bit more sense than it had before. He's genuinely good to me, better than I thought was possible for someone to be. Freya absolutely loves him. He builds elaborate cardboard castles with her for hours, listens to her detailed wolf theories like they're gospel truth, and lets her win at Mario Kart exactly half the time so she feels accomplished but also challenged. She told him the other day, completely unprompted, "I'm glad you're part of our pack now." He cried in the hallway afterward. He denies it completely, but I saw it with my own eyes. I saw the tears. There was one single attempt from my parents to reconcile with us, to repair what they'd broken. They showed up at the door one Saturday morning with a container of pancakes. Literal pancakes, still warm. Like the smell of betrayal somehow comes with maple syrup and butter. They said nervously that they didn't fully understand what Vincent was really like, that they'd been manipulated by him, and that maybe we could all move past everything that had happened. Maybe we could start over. I didn't even get the chance to answer or formulate a response. Chris stepped into the hallway, positioned himself between them and us, looked them dead in the eye, and said firmly, "You need to leave now. Right now." Freya peeked out from behind him and nodded silently like backup reinforcement, like she was voting on the decision. They left without another word. I haven't heard from them since that day. Not a single message or attempt at contact. I did hear through the grapevine, through distant relatives and old mutual friends, that things haven't been easy for them since everything happened. Financially, they're struggling significantly without my support. Some people, extended family members, old friends, neighbors, cut ties with them after finding out what they'd tried to do to me and my daughter. Apparently, trying to frame your own daughter and destroy her custody case to win back a free babysitter and vacation fund doesn't play well at bridge club or church gatherings. Who would have thought? Me. I'm doing okay now. Actually, I'm doing better than okay. Better than I've been in years. I've got a stable job that I genuinely like, with good pay and reasonable hours. A daughter who laughs in her sleep, who draws wolves winning battles, who feels safe enough to be a child again, and a partner who makes me feel safe in ways I didn't even know I needed, who stands beside me without trying to control me. It's not flashy or dramatic. It's not perfect by any means. But it's mine, it's ours, and I'll fight like hell to keep protecting it. Did I go too far in cutting off my parents completely, or not far enough in holding them accountable? Let me know what you think in the comments below. And if you haven't already, please consider subscribing to hear more stories like this one.